More on our breaking news this morning. Two communities protesting deadly police shootings that killed black men. There were violent protests in Charlotte overnight. Demonstrators taking an interstate, as you can see here, setting fires, blocking the roadway. Here to discuss this, as well as many other issues, is Senator Chris Coons. He's from Delaware. He's a Democrat and a Hillary Clinton supporter. He's also on the Senate Committee of Foreign Relations. Senator, thanks so much for being here. I know you just heard that interview with the Crutcher family. How do you explain that we see too many of these, of black men being shot after what is supposed to be a routine traffic stop? In this case, his car had broken down. He was actually looking for help, and in the space of just a few minutes, he's killed.
That's right, Allison. This is sadly another chapter in what has been a whole series of tragic shootings that I think the African American community, Americans concerned about justice, find unacceptable, and where hearings that we've held on the Judiciary Committee, actions that the Justice Department has taken, has not yet made a significant difference. This is a question in no small part about police training and policies and how deadly force is used. I've been here in New York for the United Nations meetings. It was striking how quickly, how well the NYPD and FBI investigated and solved Ahmed Khan, Kahami, forgive me, his bomb attacks. Yeah. And one of the most painful things I heard on TV was someone from Charlotte saying he was taken in alive for questioning. How come when someone like Terrence Crutcher has an encounter with police, he ends up dead?
A terror suspect is taken in alive. That is an interesting perspective, a lens through which to look at it. But, you know, from the police perspective, if somebody's not following commands, this is what they say. They say they found PCP in his car, which may contribute somehow to his not following commands. I mean, what are police supposed to do in that situation?
Well, one of our challenges nationally is to put this in perspective. We have about 3 million people in law enforcement across the entire country. So the percentage of law enforcement officers who are involved in the use of deadly force is a very, very small percentage. And the percentage of those cases that end up on national news after a tragedy is exceptionally small. If you don't have good training, and if we don't have thorough and transparent investigations, and there isn't justice in cases that turn out to have been bad shootings where officers made a tragic mistake, then the trust with the African American community in our country is understandably, is justifiably eroded, and we have incidents like the riots last night.
There's been a failure not to take the next step, and that's pretty obvious. Often the federal government gets a pass on this because policing is a state and local issue, but that's not entirely true. There is no national database of accounting for these kinds of shootings.
That's right.
With all of the things that the federal government decides to stick its nose into that is arguably irrelevant, if not redundant, who is stopping the federal government from coming together and having a national database just to track the shootings?
Right. I'm a co-sponsor of legislation that would create just such a database.
Well, who's stopping it?
We are not able to move forward in the Senate, as you know. I think responsible changes in terms of background checks, in terms of studies and accountability around deadly use of force, or around the impact that handguns have in American life. And
but why group them all together? The gun issue is too politically charged. You guys aren't going to come together on it. I'm not saying that's a good thing. It's a practical thing.
These are closely connected in terms of who is opposing moving forward.
Just to count them. Right. Just that, don't muddy it up with anything else. Just when one of these things happen, we mark it down. And so we can look at it year over year. Who's getting shot? Why are they getting shot? Who, you know, how many and how many different places? Why can't you just get that done?
Chris, I think you're well aware that there are national lobbying organizations and there are political leaders in the other party who have opposed bipartisan background checks, bipartisan criminal justice reform, and bipartisan efforts that would strengthen the hand of the Federal Department of Justice and its Civil Rights Division. Civil Rights Division has made a significant impact and contribution in municipalities like Ferguson, in cases like Baltimore, where there were real differences and real problems between the community and the police department. Earlier in my life, when I was a county executive, I was responsible for a county police department, and I was proud of our record there. We had very few problems like this. But we did have one tragic shooting where an adult man who was mentally ill was not compliant, was not responding to orders from local police, a municipal police force, to stop, and he advanced on a whole group of police. Some of our county police were involved as well, and he was killed. And that led to my direct involvement in a very searching revision of our policies and our training around the handling of incidents involving adults with mental illness. That is different than this case, but you were asking me, Allison, earlier. In an instance where police are
although if somebody's on
training,
PCP, they should be considered mentally ill. That should be part of the training
behave
of how you deal with this type of odd behavior and how you de-escalate the force without having to go to a gun.
I want to
and with the right training, you can avoid having those instances escalate into the use of deadly force.
Thanks for giving us your experience on that. I do want to quickly turn to the United Nations General Assembly.
Yes.
It was President Obama's final appearance in
Yes.
front of that body. Let me play a portion of that for you.
Today, a nation ringed by walls would only imprison itself. So the answer cannot be a simple rejection of global integration. Instead, we must work together to make sure the benefits of such integration are broadly shared.
I know you were there in the room for that moment. A nation ringed by walls would only imprison itself. What could he be referring to?
Well, I think he's indirectly referring to the central campaign proposal of Donald Trump to build a wall with Mexico and make them pay for it. I'll tell you, earlier this summer, I led a bipartisan delegation to Eastern Europe. We visited Ukraine in particular, and I know President Poroshenko of Ukraine was seeking a meeting with Donald Trump while he was here in New York, meeting with the president of Egypt, and was rejected. In no small part, what President Obama delivered in a very strong speech yesterday was a call for the world to come together to address the very serious problem of refugees, and a call for us to continue to look for peaceful solutions to some of the real challenges in the world. Donald Trump's statements about Ukraine and Putin suggest a dangerous lack of familiarity with Putin's actual record of invading a neighboring country, and a dangerous lack of respect for familiarity with our NATO treaty alliances. In meetings I had with heads of state in recent days here in New York City, they all expressed real concern or question about Donald Trump's readiness or fitness to serve as president.
Senator Chris Coons, thanks so much for being here with your expertise on all of these issues. Thanks so much.
It's good to have you. We're learning more details